Princess Louise of Belgium was never wanted by her father or her husband. Her father needed a male heir, and his daughter was merely a nuisance. Married off to a man she didn't love, who abused her, she turned to drink and open flirtations with other men, scandalizing her family and forcing the emperor to intervene. She had duels fought in her honor, was disowned by her family, locked in a mental asylum so her husband could lay claim to her inheritance, and had a daring escape through 3 countries that seems like something out of an Ian Fleming novel. In the background were world wars that left her penniless, begging for handouts, and the love of a man who gave up his very own life for her. Join us this week as we look at the story of Princess Louise of Belgium, the Princess of the Asylum. Princess Louise of Belgium emerged into the world on a frosty 18th of February 1858, the first child of King Leopold II of Belgium, a man guilty of the most horrible atrocities in the Congo, who was said to have love for nothing but money. Her mother, also wealthy, was Marie Henriette of Austria. Desperately wanting a male heir, her father was unimpressed with her birth, remarking, "I hope she will be pretty one day. She certainly does have a big nose." A year later, the coveted male arrived in her younger brother Leopold, then a sister, Stephanie, in 1864, and finally Clementine in 1872. As the eldest, Louise bore the mantle of expectation, her every action a precedent for her siblings. They were nurtured under a strict English regime, their chambers stark and unadorned, a reflection of their disciplined upbringing. Tragedy struck when young Leopold, an emblem of familial hope, succumbed to pneumonia after a hapless tumble into a pond. His death on a bleak January day in 1869 at the tender age of 9 cast a shadow over the royal household. This loss shattered their mother, Marie Henriette, and left King Leopold bereft of his heir, Belgium's laws barring women from the throne. Louise, who had cherished her brother dearly, penned a poignant remembrance. Leopold, handsome, sweet, sincere, tender, and intelligent, embodied for me, after our mother, all that was most precious in the world. I could no more conceive existence without him than the day without light. But he could not stay, and I still weep for him, although it has been more than 50 years since he left me. After Henriette failed to deliver a male heir with the birth of Clementine, their relationship grew cold. Louise recalls, "I cannot recall a single act of tenderness or kindness on my father's part towards my mother." The chasm between Louise and her father grew wider. She saw him more as a sovereign than a parent. Yet, with her mother, she found a semblance of warmth, sharing leisurely drives and basking in the expanse of the castle of Laken's gardens. Her insatiable curiosity earned her the moniker Madame Pourquoi, Miss Why, a testament to her unyielding quest for knowledge. Henriette raised them to be aware of their royal dignity and to follow the rules of propriety at all times. At the tender age of 15, Louise was betrothed to her 31-year-old second cousin, Prince Philip of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha. Philip's proposals had twice met with hesitation, but her father, despite his reservations, finally acquiesced. Her mother, however, welcomed the union, foreseeing a life for Louise within the illustrious Austrian court. On a crisp February day in 1875, they wed in Brussels, the ceremony officiated by Mayor Jules Ansbach. Unaware and unprepared for the ordeals of the wedding night, Louise later confided in her memoirs, "I fell from my heaven of love to what was for me a bed of rock and a mattress of thorns." When Philip departed in the early hours, Louise, in her nightgown, cloak, and slippers, sought solace among the camellias in the orangery. She poured her anguish into the stillness of the greenhouse. "I whispered my grief, my despair, and my torture to their whiteness, their freshness, their perfume, and their purity, to all that they represented of sweetness and affection, as they flowered in the greenhouse and lit up the winter's dawn with a warmth, silence, and beauty which brought me back a little of my lost paradise." Discovered by a sentry, she was returned to her quarters, where her mother awaited, the weight of maternal concern etched upon her brow, telling her it was her marital duty to submit to her husband. While never going into detail of the wedding night, she said it left her bruised and mangled in her soul, and that she felt more dead than alive. Her new husband tried to change her. He gave her an education through erotic art and books, controlling every aspect of her daily life, forcing her to drink more alcohol, believing it would calm her nerves. He even controlled which coffee she drank. She had a milk allergy and preferred it black, but despite her getting sick, he made her drink coffee with only milk, as that was simply what aristocrats did, he told her. As the nightmare ebbed from her turbulent night, plans for Louise's departure from Belgium unfurled with chilling precision. Stripped of the comfort of her maids, she left her homeland, a frightened young bride bound to a man she barely knew. The early weeks of her marriage to Philip were fraught with indignities. He plied her with drink and punctuated their time together with crude jests. Feeling trapped within the gilded confines of her palace, Louise decided to give in to her husband's whims, only with a twist. She would drink and flirt with the men who attended their gatherings, dancing with every eligible suitor, igniting Philip's jealousy and rage. Her behavior soon earned her the reputation of a party girl, the one who drank too much, flirted too openly, and wore scandalously revealing clothing. Louise wrote, "A palace can become a hell, and the worst hell of suffering behind gilded windows. Titles count for nothing. A bad household is a bad household." On the 19th of July, 1879, Louise bore her first child, a son named Leopold. The arrival of her daughter, Dorothea, on the 30th of April, 1881, was shrouded in solitude and secrecy. Dreading Philip's presence, Louise concealed her labor pains until the very last moment. By the time the midwife arrived, it was already too late, as was Philip. At a party, she befriended the crown prince, finding a brief respite from her anguish. At the imperial court of Emperor Franz Joseph and his enchanting wife, Elizabeth, Sisi, Louise was initially captivated by the emperor's grandeur. Yet her admiration soured into disdain as she observed his coldness. At his birth, nature deprived him of a heart. He was an emperor, but he was not a man. He is best described as an automaton dressed as a soldier, she later penned. At court, she befriended Crown Prince Rudolph and convinced him to marry her sister Stephanie. Though Rudolph wasn't keen on marriage, parental pressure led him to wed Stephanie in May of 1881. Their mother Marie warned Stephanie to avoid Louise, fearing she would tarnish her reputation. In 1883, Louise started an affair with Philip's military aide, further damaging her reputation. Accusations of improper company from one of the emperor's brothers eroded Louise's standing, exacerbated by Franz Joseph's endorsement of his brother's claims. This indignity incensed Philip, but he refused Louise's demand for a duel to defend her honor. She now viewed her husband as weak and proposed a year-long separation to rediscover themselves, with the tacit understanding that they might part ways if reconciliation proved elusive. Divorce seemed a distant, almost fantastical aspiration. Louise and Philip drifted into separate lives, both indulging in extramarital affairs. Philip's indiscretions were tolerated, while Louise's liaisons provoked scandal. Among her first lovers was Baron Nicolas Dury de Jobahassa, but familial intervention quashed the affair. Undeterred, Louise embarked on an extravagant, debt-ridden lifestyle, her heart set on freedom when she fell deeply for Count Geza Matichich. Their love was intense, and when she went on vacation, he followed. She commissioned him to buy horses for her stable so he could teach her to ride better, giving them an excuse to meet more often. Philip informed Franz Joseph of the affair, and the Count was banned from court. Together with her daughter Dorothea, Louise fled to France, seeking solace in the Count's arms. During this period, she spent money on the most extravagant items. Her father owned the Belgian Congo and overlooked every atrocity there, and she worried little about money. Spending her husband's wealth, she simply said it was a way of revenging myself for the constraints and pettiness of an oppressive avarice. Back in Vienna, Louise was seen as a disgrace, a wild, spoiled, selfish woman who was an embarrassment to her husband and family. Her daughter's fiancé tried to convince Dorothea to leave her mother to avoid the consuming scandal. On February 18, 1898, Louise's birthday, Philip sent a message to France, challenging the Count to a duel. The Count accepted and returned to Vienna. The two dueled with pistols. The Count shot in the air, while Philip aimed for the Count and missed. The duel progressed to swords, and the Count nicked Philip on the hand, easily winning. But Philip had no intention of giving up, and accused the Count of forging signatures on promissory notes to help fund his lifestyle with Louise. Louise's initial plan to seek Queen Victoria's protection in England faltered as the Queen was abroad. Instead, she went to the Count's stepfather's residence in Croatia. Believing herself safe, she continued her relentless pursuit of divorce. But soon, Austrian spies found them and arrested the Count on the forgery charge. He was stripped of his title and sentenced to 6 years in military prison. Louise's own plight grew dire when she was forcibly taken from her bed and presented with an ultimatum from her husband: return to him or be confined to an asylum. Louise chose the latter, embracing imprisonment over a loveless union. Anticipating her response, Philip had sent a lawyer, a doctor, and a nurse with a pre-written diagnosis of insanity. They grabbed her, put her on a train, and checked her into the Döbling asylum just outside of Vienna. His desire was to confine her there for the rest of her days. Her father cut all ties with her, embarrassed by her behavior, as did the rest of her Belgian family. Reflecting on her ordeal in her memoirs, Louise wrote, "At Döbling, and afterwards, my tortures would have been beyond human endurance if I alone had been obliged to suffer. But with the hope of divine justice, the knowledge that another was submitting to a worse punishment solely on my account gave me strength to endure. The loss of honor is as terrible as the loss of reason." Her words, steeped in sorrow and defiance, echoed the profound agony and resilience that marked her journey. But what terrible hours I have passed! What nights of agony! What horrible nightmares! What tears, what sobs! I tried in vain to control myself. For 4 long, tormenting years, Louise, branded insane and shunned by the royal courts of Europe, languished in asylums, her regal spirit caged. Eventually, she was transferred to Lindenhof, where a semblance of liberty was granted, yet she lamented it as a gilded cage and a tomb. Her solitude was momentarily pierced by her aunt, the Countess of Flanders, and her daughter, who visited her. Her father remained a ghostly absence, and when her mother passed away in 1902, the chance for reconciliation perished with her. Though they had exchanged letters during Louise's confinement, she somberly reflected, "I felt that my mother had been convinced that I was really insane." She then asked her daughter and her husband to help her, and they responded they would only help if she signed over any inheritance she would receive. She refused. "My crime consisted in showing that deplorable spirit the world rarely pardons, the fighting spirit, the spirit of resistance. The world dislikes a woman who defends herself." The media reported on her situation with fervor, and Philip, determined to rid himself of her, sent her to a facility in Saxony. In 1904, the indomitable Count Geza Matović was pardoned for his alleged crimes. It took him 3 more arduous years to orchestrate Louise's escape. They communicated only through clandestine notes, and as time wore on, her health deteriorated. She was permitted a visit to Bad Elster to take the waters, but remained under tight surveillance. Through the covert aid of a hotel waiter, the Count managed to send messages to Louise, and she kept hope. One night, she received the message, "It will be tomorrow." On a tense August night in 1904, with her faithful dog Kiki by her side, Louise awaited the signal. The night watchman arrived, escorting her and her few belongings to the ground floor, where the Count awaited, disguised as a peasant. They slipped into the darkened streets, reached a waiting carriage, and were spirited away to Berlin. From there, they boarded the Orient Express, bound for France via Belgium. Crossing into Belgium, a superintendent recognized Louise and reassured the Count, "It is our princess, is it not? Do not be afraid. Nobody will betray her." Their audacious plan had succeeded. In Paris, Louise underwent thorough examinations by French physicians who declared her sane. With that declaration in hand, she began divorce proceedings against Philip. However, financial ruin shadowed her liberation. Her father had struck her from his will when her divorce from Prince Philip was finalized in 1906. Despite initiating legal battles and suing her father for her share of her mother's inheritance, King Leopold II's death in 1909 left the matter unresolved. He had hidden his money so well that both she and her sister received almost nothing. The Belgian government allotted her a stipend, but funds did not arrive until after the First World War. It was estimated that she received about $300,000 in the end, while her debts were 10 times that. Throughout the next few years, traveling with the Count, she was involved in several shadowy financial deals and was sued over backing out of investments. When the war erupted, Louise found herself in Vienna, quickly branded an enemy subject and expelled. Intending to return to Belgium, she ended up stranded in Munich, subsisting under the patronage of the Bavarian court. As German victories turned the Bavarians' generosity to reluctance, she became dependent on her son-in-law, Ernst Günther, Duke of Schleswig-Holstein, Sonderburg-Augustenburg, who sought to coerce her into relinquishing any claim to her aunt Charlotte's inheritance. Meanwhile, the Count was arrested and deported back to Croatia, accused of conspiring against the Austro-Hungarian Empire, and was placed in a camp, leaving Louise penniless and alone. Even all her clothes and accessories were seized, and she needed to survive on handouts. She wanted to visit her daughter, who refused to even meet her. On word from Geza, she wandered to Hungary without a passport and was able to see him occasionally, where she witnessed the Austrian Empire's collapse and faced mockery. She was briefly taken prisoner and mocked by soldiers. "Here is a king's daughter who is poorer than I am." After she was released, she and the Count moved to Paris. Bereft but resilient, Louise turned to writing, and her memoirs were published in 1921. She dedicated the final pages to Count Matach, her steadfast lover. "This spirit of sacrifice is peculiarly your own. I never possessed it, but you have endowed me with it. No gift has ever been so precious to my soul, and I shall be beyond grateful to you on this side of the tomb and beyond it. I, who alone know you as you really are, and know the adoration that has given you a reason for living. I thank you, Count, in the twilight of my days for the nobility which you have always shown in this adoration. Shall I ever know, will you ever know, the meaning of rest otherwise than the last rest which is the lot of mankind?" In 1923, the Count, her devoted champion, passed away, leaving her without the means to even pay for his funeral. Louise's own life drew to a close on the 1st of March 1924, when she succumbed to pneumonia at 66 in Wiesbaden, holding the Count's picture against her chest. Her final resting place lies in Wiesbaden's Südfriedhof, where she was laid to rest, her turbulent life a testament to unyielding resilience and tragic romance. Princess Louise of Belgium's life was a saga of defiance and despair, a poignant ballet of resilience danced in the shadows of gilded cages and cold asylum walls. From the grandeur of royal courts to the bleakness of imprisonment, her indomitable spirit wove a tapestry of love and rebellion, a ceaseless fight against the chains that sought to bind her. Abandoned by her father, betrayed by her husband, and disowned by her family, Louise found solace in forbidden love and the written word. Her final years, spent in the arms of her steadfast Count and immortalized in her memoirs, stand as a testament to a woman who refused to be tamed. I hope you enjoyed this week's story of Princess Louise of Belgium, the Princess in the Asylum. Please let me know who else you would like me to cover. Your likes, shares, comments, and subscriptions really help keep the channel going. So thank you both for that and for watching.